I recently recorded my first ever YouTube video, and despite months of planning, I made a ton of rookie mistakes. Some of these might be noticeable in the final cut, but the vast majority happen behind the scenes. The kind of problems that you only really find by doing, and which make the whole process way more stressful and time-consuming than it really needs to be. Now, a reasonable person might say this is pretty much to be expected. Practice makes perfect, after all, and your first 100 videos are probably going to be trash. But I put it to you, dear viewer, that those people are probably not academics. You think I'm just going to make mistakes and learn from them like some commoner? I haven't spent the last 10 years of my life in higher education to have realistic expectations. I am a scientist, after all. And if there's one thing I know how to do, it's how to overanalyze a situation.
I will have order! I will have perfection!
So here's my attempt to set the record straight. I'm going to riff off some of the biggest lessons in content creation that I had to learn the hard way, and then you can expect only flawless videos from me in the future. The first stage in my video making process was to choose a topic and write a script. A topic came quite easily. I work on some really bizarrely toxic glacial rivers in Peru and thought that would be an interesting way to start my channel.
But Rory, your first video was on tropical glaciers.
I know, and let me tell you why. You see, there I was, happily writing about acidification in post-glacial environments, when I looked down and saw that I'd written more than 3,000 words. Which, let me tell you, is more than twice the length of my final script, which means more than twice the time editing, and more than twice the time recording. Needless to say, that would have been a bit much alongside my PhD. So, what went wrong? Well, basically, when I made this channel, I decided that I wanted to make videos for a non-specialist audience. Students, art historians, my dad. Which means that I couldn't just assume that my audience knew what oxidation, or glacial retreat, or tropical glaciers are. I needed to give context. A lot of context. And before I knew it, the context was most of my essay. Fortunately, there was an easy fix to this problem. When I looked back at the small literature review that had been my context section, I realised, actually there's a lot of interesting stuff in here, and any of it could be a video in its own right. So I picked tropical glaciers as my new topic, and the rest is, well, a slick 8-minute video that you can go watch after this one. The good news is that once I'd chosen a more realistic topic, my video was perfect for everyone. Hello? Oh, I see. You may have noticed that I mentioned writing for a non-specialist audience, to make videos for a non-specialist audience. And that's a problem. You see, academics often like to categorize everyone outside of their field as a non-specialist. But there's no such thing as a general non-specialist audience. The best video for my dad is not going to be the same as the best video for a 16-year-old GCSE geography student or a 24-year-old art historian. My dad, for instance, would like me to give him more reason to care about glaciers at the start of the video, rather than waiting until the end to talk about communities and ecosystems. He'd like simple charts to help illustrate figures and comparisons, whereas the 16-year-old just wants memes. To quote my therapist, you can't make everyone happy. Sometimes it's better to focus your script or your format towards one specific group, rather than trying to make something with everyone in mind. Unless you're David Attenborough. Attenborough
is for everyone.
Here's a novel take for you. Acting is hard.
You don't say!
Right, it sounds obvious, but I definitely didn't consider some of the finer points of acting until after I'd started editing. My initial plan had been to record the whole lot, audio and video, in this one narrator-centric shot, and then just simply switch out my face for something more interesting, like a glacier carving. The problem was that I spent so much of my brain power worrying about the script and my body language that I completely forgot to put any energy into my voice acting. I could get away with it in shots like this, but as soon as I switched to a voiceover, it became painfully obvious that there was no emotion in my voice. In the end, I decided to re-record quite a few of the voiceovers. Unfortunately, this was a couple of days later, by which point I'd already started to develop a cold, so the difference in audio quality was quite noticeable to headphone users. Moreover, because I didn't plan my shots in advance, I didn't even consider that I should spend some time engaging with the camera before and after I spoke. This in turn made editing much more difficult because I had to cut out the start and end of every single shot so that I didn't look like an extra from the office. It also removed the option to leave pauses between sections. Not only are pauses a great opportunity to play around with the cinematography, but they also give the viewer some time to absorb information before moving on. And when you're watching something in your free time, it's nice not to feel rushed. Now, you may have noticed that I admitted to not planning my shots in advance. Because I didn't plan my shots in advance, and you probably thought nothing of it because I'm new to this and it's just a fun little side hobby, there's no need to plan everything out perfectly.
Well, you're wrong. I am a scientist and this will not do.
Seriously though, it's so much easier to record your script when you already know how the audio and video will be used. It's also much easier to build a script around whatever diagrams or graphs you want to use, rather than having to find or create appropriate graphics to match your script. And if that doesn't sound bad to you, then try comprehending these monstrosities for the actual amount of time that they are on screen for. You can't. And no, none of them were really central to my core messages, but only I know that. If all you've seen is a brief flash of charts with no real explanation, then you'd be well within your rights to think that you might be missing out on something. And apparently, not everyone wants to rewind and pause whenever they don't have time to finish reading all of the on-screen infographics. Who knew? Last but not least, let's talk about setting realistic expectations for editing. Using a fast editing style is all the rage these days, as you can transmit information quickly, and it's easier to add in mini jokes throughout your video, both of which are good for audience retention. However, imitating that editing style is not very easy, especially if you're new to the whole YouTube thing. Seriously, do you have any idea how long it took me to make title cards that match the audio? It's fine as a one-off, but it's still quite a lot of work per second of dialogue. Also, as we've just seen, fast transitions might not be very suited to the kind of information that I'm trying to convey, especially when graphs and diagrams are involved so much. I know that intense editing styles can be used very effectively, but considering the amount of effort that everything takes me at the moment, the payoff is just not good enough. It's almost as if it's not worth putting thousands of hours into doing something perfectly. No, that can't be right. Perfectionism is the goal of every academic. If I'm not putting my absolute best into every single detail, do I even deserve to be here? I mean, my PhD thesis is going to change the world, right? Right? No. There must be another angle to this. If perfectionism is bad, then surely someone would have written something on it. A book, a principle, a YouTube video. Oh. You see, dear viewer, this story doesn't start with an editing style or an overly ambitious script. This story starts 4 years ago, when I promised myself that I'd start to make videos about my PhD. Just as soon as I'm ready. As soon as I'm good enough. But if all you want is perfection, then you're never going to get good enough. Yes, perfectionism is the reason that I made a lot of the poor choices in my last video. But it's also the reason that I didn't know better already. And that's why I'm putting this video out into the world. Not because I'm saying anything brand new or unique, but because it's taken me 28 years to appreciate that perfect really is the enemy of the good. And if one person out there sees this and internalizes that message, even just a tiny bit, then this video will have done its job. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos by me, then at the time of recording, there's only one. So click here if you'd like to learn about tropical glaciers. I do have some other videos about glaciers and climate on the way though, so if you're from the future, hello! Hopefully there's now something here. Or you can subscribe. Hey? Okay, bye.